Uh, this topic is nothing complicated, extremely simple topic. But however, if you understand, if you able to use this, I'm pretty sure you will be able to do very attractive projects and come up with solutions. So with that note, let's start this one. This is my most used slide. I start this slide pretty much with every presentation and do. What this really means, this is the whole subject when it comes to anything. This is like theory of anything. What we will be covering is pretty much this bit, not even this. We'll be covering only this part. So there's a lot more for you to learn. Having said that, okay. In multiple countries, in multiple countries in the world, you have different stories. But however, the story boils down to 6 blind people, not men. In Sri Lanka, we call it 6 blind men. But in this case, I think I see a lady. So this boils down to 6 blind people trying to figure out what is an elephant is. So, have you heard about this story before? It's in Sri Lankan culture. We talk about one blind person, and going and saying, elephant is a fan, elephant is a wall, it's a rope, elephant is a tree, it's a snake and a spear, and so on and so forth. Right? What does this mean? What I'm actually trying to say, Google is so big that every one of you would have a perception. You would have your own opinion. In your opinion, you might have seen a specific area of it, and you have a definition on that. So let's move on. Is Google make glasses? Google glasses, how many of you heard about Google glasses? So is Google an optician? Are they making glasses? Yes, they make glasses, right? Google car. Anyone who has not heard about Google car? Not heard about Google car. So are they a car manufacturer? Because they make cars? A phone company? They make a phone. They give a spec out for a phone. What is this phone called? Nexus 5. So are they a phone company? No. So what are they really? Anyone in the crowd? First answer gets a pen, I guess. Pens? What is Google? Competition? Incorporation, incorrect answer, but you get a pen. Anyone else? Solution provider. Yep. Cool. These are the logos, right? You may have. So for the next question, only the right question or the partially right question gets paid, not everyone. These are the logos. If you can spot a logo which you have not seen before, raise your hand. What is this product? What is this product? Oh, okay. This? And what is this product? Google Trend. Okay. When it comes to technologies and tools, it's a very hard deal to summarize Google into one slide, but I'm just trying to separate things out. Anything that you don't know here? What's Google TV? What's in Google TV? Anyone give a proper answer to Google TV? I'll give a book. Why not? Pass the book. I don't think they'll catch the book right. Proper answer to Google TV.
Streaming live telecast? Streaming live telecast?
Not really, sorry. No book for you today.
It was close, but
Okay, I'll make the question easy. Give me a clear answer to this. What's Android?
it's an open source mobile operating system.
Open source mobile operating systems. Yeah. What's your name? Okay, Mohammed gets a book. See, this is the easiest session that you have ever been into, and the easiest questions that you have tried. Okay, so I have highlighted cloud platform, right? So what we are trying to do, Google APIs are part of this technology, this product suite. And I understand you have Google App Engine as another session coming up and so many areas. So I'm trying to do only the APIs, which is like a teeny weeny product out of the platform. So let's go to the platform. You have App Engine, Compute Engine, all these services, and the way it is being built, this is a computer layer. Then you have the App Engine, then you have apps. Right. Now I'm going to ask a slightly difficult question, but it's involved in a book. What is cloud computing? No Googling, please. What's cloud computing? Anyone? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Yes?
Cloud computing is that when we work something, in all areas we can say that there is a location. But in cloud computing, it can be everywhere. Any server, any place, or we can access any place to that direction. Like that.
So, back in the days when you go buy a web server, did you actually know where the server was? And even today, when you buy a, yeah, so I need a slightly better answer.
There's a server. There are many servers. Yeah, it's working online. There are servers, and we can access to the servers, and the servers give the users a virtual computer. I mean, like a virtual machine to work with.
Okay, so what's the difference between a standard web server? You log into a web server, it's a virtual box that you get. So, yeah.
It's a distributed network which enables you to use the sources in other locations.
Use what?
Use the resources. Resource means computing, speed, process, space.
So even in cloud computing, your hardware, eventual hardware box has its CPU and memory in the same location. You wouldn't have a CPU in one and a memory in one. Right? Okay, so probably that question goes for your homework, right? Not satisfied with that answer. So life is not that fair and easy, right? So I just want you to understand that as well. Moving on. What's API?
Third. Programming interface.
Visha?
Application programming interface. Third.
Unfortunately, there's no gift for that. Please, a pleasing interface, American Pain Institute, nothing. It's application, programming, interface. Right? Okay, I understand what, there are 3 words to it. Can anyone give an example of an application programming interface?
Google API.
Huh?
Google API.
Google API, yes. And he gets a book this time.
Oh yeah.
The other lesson in life, there's nothing like trying, right? How many books we bought this time? You guys didn't mix any vodka in this. What? Okay, so let's go to the read this paragraph. Take a moment to yourself. Read this paragraph. And these are the consume apps, right? Honestly, if you have understood the concept of API, application programming interface, raise your hand. Okay, so rest have not understood it, right? We got an example for it. UI versus API. I assume we all understand what a user interface is, right? We work with user interfaces day-to-day basis. So in this case, I'm taking you guys from known to unknown. Your known is a user interface. In your operating system, the applications that you work on, you have a user interface. Let's go to a other domain other than IT. Like my analogy is going to a bank. You go to a bank. How do you talk to your banker, right? Versus writing a letter to your bank. I request that you close the following accounts I have at your branch. Do you walk into a bank like HSBC or Sampath, and there's a lovely lady right in front of you? Do you tell her, I request that you close the following accounts I have at your branch? Do you talk like that? She would definitely look at you and say, a crazy person. Security, get this person out, right? But if you write it in a letter, that is accepted. And when you are writing a letter, you have a specific format to them. Subject, date, the person that you are addressing, the address, the person that you are addressing, address, summary, details, extra information, and your signature, right? And if you write another letter, will you drop the subject? Will you drop this address? You would still write all of that. Okay, you would still do that. You would write all of that information even in your second letter, because that's how you write a letter. It has certain areas that you fill. But if you go to the bank second day and if you see the same person, how would you react? Would you tell that person, hey, do you remember I came yesterday? That would be more of a human way of saying that, right? And also you walk into a bank and in a good way, if that person is wearing a nice dress or a nice sari or what that, you would compliment, nice dress, nice sari, right? But in your letter, would you ever do that? I believe you are wearing a nice dress. You wouldn't do that. So that's the difference between how you deal with a UI and an API. This is an API. This API is a request. The difference between a UI and an API, in an API, you communicate, your endpoint is another machine, right? That's why I have, at the beginning, I have two robots communicating to each other. APIs are there for machine to communicate with other machine. End-to-end communication is what is opposed by API. When you expose an API, most likely that API is consumed by another application. Right? It's not a interface for human, rather it's a interface for other application. So bottom line, if you have a requirement where your application system that you are building needs to communicate with other systems, other non-human computer systems, ideal way to do this integration is via what? Via an API, right? That's all you need to understand. If you are talking to a system, if you are exposing your system to humans, what would you have in your application? A UI. You'd have a UI where a person would talk to that UI. If you want to communicate with another system, if your system wants to communicate with another system, that communication, that integration will happen via API. If your system needs to communicate with another system in order to get data, you would consume the other system's API. And if your system needs to expose data to another system to consume, you would serve API, you would expose an API. So at a given time, you can be a consumer of API. You become a consumer of API when you want to get data. And if you want to expose data from your system, you would expose an API. That's the only difference. Alright, so let's quickly move on. Integrate programmatically. Anytime you need to integrate two systems programmatically, API is your solution. Do you know this guy? Do you like that? Yeah. He makes a request to the bank and he gets a response. This is the whole pattern the API works. Make a request, you get a response. And your request has a format and your response has a format. And these formats are tuned, are designed for machines to read, not for humans to read. So response from an API is highly designed for machines to read, not for humans to read. If you need human to read that, you would be designing a UI, not an API. Another example, you have one application and you have another application. This application is the consumer, this user is the consumer. So these two are consumers, user, so a human and a machine, human and a machine. Human consumes your application via UI. GUI is the graphical part of it. It could be a command line UI or whatever, via UI. If another application wants to consume your application, it's via API. How many of you have studied distributed computing as a subject? Distributed computing? Okay. In distributed computing, two systems which are physically distributed needs to communicate with each other, needs to pass data in between. Other than exposing APIs, what are the other available methods? And that, if the answer is right, you get a book for that. Other than APIs, what are the other ways you can consume? Get me the pens. Throwing pens is more fun. Other than getting data, yes. You can be seated. You can be seated and just.
Using cloud storage and
So how do you access the cloud?
using internet.
no, my question is without an API. Two systems communicating each other with API is very clear. Yes.
Java, you can use remote method invocation.
RMI, yes. RMI is another solution and you get a book for that.
And you can use other
Yes.
Network.
Yes, in network. Now, anyway, even for the API to work, you need to have a medium. Your network would be your medium to take that, right? So, RMI is another form of RPC, calling something on the other side. And it's kind of API, but it's a different implementation altogether. Another very simple approach, something that actually you guys can think of, is what we used to have long time back before APIs, is called shared database. How about this application has a database. The other application who needs data directly access this guy's database, which is called shared database. The problem with that, when multiple people are accessing your database other than your application, consistency has issues. Right? So that's why we don't favor shared database solutions anymore, and we go for API driven solutions. All right, let's move on. Any questions so far? Do you now have a sense of API? If you don't have a sense of API, please raise your hand now. Last chance. So you understand? Yes. Okay. So we are still talking about application programming interfaces, right? And application programming interfaces have multiple implementations, different ways of implementing APIs. You can implement an API as a REST web service, RESTful web service, as a SOAP-driven web service, as a HTTP service. That is implementation. How do you implement it? It's like you make a decision to have a database, and your database could be relational database. So something like a MySQL or your database can be a NoSQL database. Your database can be a document-driven database, right? That's an implementation level technique. Are we all clear what an API is now? All good? Right, let's move on. Why are we talking about Google APIs? It runs on Google infrastructure, right? Take a moment and read it to yourself. Global network. Google has one of the largest and most advanced computer networks. Is it true or false? How many engineers work for Google? It's just a white page with one search box and a button. How many engineers work for Google? Huh?
50,000.
50,000? No, not that much.
10,000.
How many engineers, how many IT graduates does Sri Lanka generate per year?
Nearly 10,000. Nearly 10,000.
1,000? I think we are slightly above 1,000. We are closer to 1,005 to 1,006 a year, IT graduates. That is people who pass the exam. Does not mean they are ready to be deployed and to start working. Right? Okay. Google has over 3,000 engineers. Right? Over 3,000 engineers. Hardware is so big. I don't have stats on hardware, but that you can run your Google queries and figure out how they have. Redundancy, multiple locations across the globe. So if server 1 goes down, the same information is in server 2. That is what the redundancy means. Duplication, copy something. Right? Cutting-edge technology. Span, have anyone looked at what span is? And Flume? Okay. I'll leave those for your homework. Search it up and see what Spanner and Flume for. Focus on your product. When you try to build a product, you would rather focus on the business functionality of your product than the servers, server administration, and so on and so forth, right? You worry about your application, and Google will worry about the infrastructure while you focus on your application code. You're building application like you're going to deploy it in your machine and run it. All the servers, domains, all the problems, Google will take care of it. Developer tools and SDKs. What is SDK? What's SDK? Huh? Development kit, okay. And you get consoles, you can monitor your application from one window. So all the hard work of setting up networks, hardware, installing operating systems, installing application servers on top of that, that's taken care of. Mix and match. Google APIs to quickly enable wide range of functionality for your application. You don't need to build this from scratch. You can just do the integration and take advantage. So that's why you should go with Google API. For Google APIs, give me one competitor to Google APIs.
Microsoft.
Microsoft what?
Windows Azure.
Yes. Unfortunately, no. Okay, now I'm changing gears here. Now I'm moving to all this time we were looking at Google APIs in general. Now let's look at a new keyword called RESTful. RESTful is an implementation on API, and I do understand. I do not expect you to fully understand this slide, and I personally suggest you invest time and read on RESTful web services little later and try understanding that in detail. What this ideally means, REST, representational state transfer, is an architectural style, how we model the API. REST uses URI to refer to and access a resource, like a URL endpoint. You have a endpoint that you can type. REST is based on that. REST is built on top of stateless HTTP1. What is stateless? You get a book if you give a right answer to stateless. So, what's the opposite of stateless? Yes. Stateful. So, what's stateless? What's stateless?
Doesn't keep a track of the data or the communication that they made.
Okay, it doesn't keep a track from the previous request, right? Like writing a letter. So Shafraz can. So the ideal example is, right, when you are talking to a person, you introduce yourself to that person. Hey, who's the most popular person in this campus? What's the name of that person? Seems like there's no such popular person. If there is a popular person, that name has to come very quickly. Shafraz is okay. Shafraz goes to a person and say, "Hey, I'm Shafraz, and how old are you?" And moment he goes for the next question, does he have to say, "Hey, I'm Shafraz. Where are you from?" "Hey, I'm Shafraz. What do you do?" That's been stateless, because every question doesn't really know about the previous question that they asked, right? So in stateless, there's no session being maintained. In web application, you maintain a session. You log in once, you enter username password once, and every other request, you assume the username password is known to the server. But in stateless, every API request that you send has your username password in some form, which we call a security token. But every request has that information. It is similar to saying, "Hey, I'm Shafraz," every time when you ask a question. Okay, so that's been stateless, and it uses HTTP commands to define operations. HTTP commands are pretty much get, put, post, delete. Fortunately or unfortunately, all Google APIs are based on, I would correct myself, around 90% of Google APIs are based on this, get, which is equivalent to you type in a URL in your browser and hitting enter. When you type a URL in your browser and hit enter, what actually happens underneath, you are sending a GET request to your web server. Changing another gear. Question is, okay, now I have APIs. How do I make sure my APIs are accessed by only the people who are supposed to access, authorized access? Again, I don't think you will fully get this picture. Let me walk through this, and when we are doing some samples, you might be able to connect these two, right? You start with your app and you make a request saying, I need a token from Google service. Google is the service provider. And Google would say, okay, you need a token, I'll give you a token, but before I give you a token, you have to give me the username and password. See, okay. This app doesn't have the username and password of the user, right? App will pop up a screen from Google, and the user who's using this app will enter username, password and the consent. Okay, I will let this application to use my username, password. In Facebook, I'm not supposed to talk about Facebook in a Google context, but in order to explain it in a simpler way, in Facebook, when you try to access a Facebook application, it asks for your username, password, right? But that username, password, you don't give it to that third party app. You give it to Facebook itself. I'm gonna die. You give it to the Facebook itself, and Facebook gives a token, authorization token, to that third party app. And user enters username, password, and you get an authorization code. That authorization code comes to the app. App will give that authorization code back, exchange that for a token. You get a token back, and this is the token that you send with each API call. That is the token in our case, Hey I'm Safras. Hey I'm Safras. That's the secret code that goes all the time. So what's the advantage? Why do we make things so complicated? Why can't we send user login every time? Why do we make things so complicated? You request for a token and you request for an authorization code and exchange that for security tokens. Why make? Yeah, security, and there are so many use cases, right? Number one, in this scenario, if you want to cancel one of the apps, that you have logged into multiple apps and you want to kill one of the apps, you don't have to change your username and password, because this app has never got your username, password. Instead of your username, password, it has got only an authorization code. It's a matter of saying this authorization code is invalid, no longer I need this. So the app which is using that authorization code now cannot access that. If you lose your phone, you can log in from another area, another machine, and say all the apps which are using my tokens, I can delete those. And you don't have to change your username, password every time. So that's one advantage. The other advantage is information that you have shared with the third party apps is just a token. They never understand what is your password. So they won't be able to guess your password patterns and so on and so forth. This whole thing is called OAuth, and the version of this OAuth is called OAuth version 2. Right? OAuth 2 is the most popular authorization mechanism today. Also with this you can do an additional thing. When you pass the authorization code and the token, you can decide access levels, access control, access level or entitlements with that code. You can only read data from my website. You can only update this part of the website. Those are access level that can be passed along with the token. If you understand 10% of that, you're good, right? Don't worry that you don't understand the entire thing. All right, so it's time for us to start API Explorer. So if you have machines, go to this URL. So any question on the theory that we just talked about before we start the API Explorer piece? Questions? So with the API Explorer, you don't need credentials. It has its own credentials, right? You don't need to type your username password. Okay. Whoever got machines, did you access API Explorer? On this end, you have something called services, right? And these are the available APIs to you. And if you read some of the descriptions, how many of you are on Google Plus? Okay. What is Google Plus? What is Google Plus? Social network, right? Does that have a UI? Yes. So all the APIs you see here has a consumer front end, right? A front end where a human can go and communicate with. This is if you want to communicate programmatically. All right, let's. Okay, now we're going to access some of the APIs and see what we can do with these APIs. The very first API is called APIs Discovery. This is like a meta API. This tells you what are the available APIs. Right? This will let you search APIs, search available APIs. This is the URL for that. In an ideal situation, now I'm doing this. What I do is I'm trying to access an API with a UI, right? Because if you have noticed that I'm not a machine, so I need a UI to access that API. If I was a machine, I would be directly communicating with an endpoint, right? And then what we call an endpoint is something like this: discovery APIs list. Now we are calling an API. When we call this API, it gives a response back. So we are making a request, and that request has no parameters. We don't type any of these things. We simply call the service, call the API, execute. Okay. Discovery API list executed. Time to execute 193 milliseconds. This is your request. You did a HTTP GET on this endpoint, right? From your machine. If it was a program, you would make a HTTP GET request on this URL endpoint, and your response has 200. The value 200 in HTTP protocol means successful. Your request was successful, and this is the response that you're looking at. 200 okay, so your request went back, you got the value, and this is the output, this is the response of your API. This is the response that you get it. This does not look familiar to a human user because this is supposed to be consumed by an application, right? What's in this section, right? Let's quickly understand what's in this. It says kind, this is the kind of that. Items, these are the items in that. These are the endpoints, URLs. So lots of information which a human find it really hard to process, right?